Okay, let's unpack this. We're about to take a deep dive into a specific passage from ancient scripture. It's all about defining borders.
That's right. And we're also looking at some, reflection notes that go along with it, thinking about what it might mean today.
Specifically, the core text is Numbers chapter 34, verses 1 through 15. This is where you find these really precise instructions for the territory of Canaan.
Exactly. So we've got the text itself and this commentary helping us explore it.
And our mission for this deep dive is, well, to pull out the key insights from these sources. We're looking at ideas around blessing, boundaries, and maybe the surprising idea of having enough.
Think of this as a way to quickly get the essence of this perspective, this way of looking at the text and how it might apply.
We're going to walk you through the details, the arguments presented in these sources. Hopefully you'll see why these ancient lines on a map could actually spark some interesting thoughts about, well, your own life today.
So yeah, let's trace these borders together and see what comes up.
Let's do it. So Numbers 34, what's the setup here?
Okay, the context is really important. You have God speaking directly to Moses, and it's not just a vague, here's some land. It's incredibly detailed instructions.
Like a legal description almost.
Sort of, yeah. Defining the land the Israelites are supposed to inherit. It's specifically called the land of Canaan in this passage.
And the source material we're using really highlights just how specific these instructions are. They're not rough guidelines.
No, not at all. They mention actual geographic points. It's like drawing a very clear shape on the map. We should probably walk through them, shouldn't we? Because that precision is key to the interpretation later.
Good idea. Where does it start? South border.
Right, the south. It runs from the wilderness of Zin, which is a desert area, alongside Edom. It starts specifically at the eastern end of the Salt Sea.
The Dead Sea, we'd call it.
Exactly. From there, it turns south of the ascent of Akrabim. That sounds like maybe a mountain pass or a ridge.
Okay.
Then it crosses back to Zin, passes south of Kadesh Barnea. You might recognize that name. It's an important oasis.
Pops up elsewhere.
Yeah. Then it goes through Hazar-Adar, then Asmon, more specific places.
Right.
And then it turns toward the Brook of Egypt, probably a wadi, a seasonal river that formed a natural boundary marker.
And that brook leads where?
It leads to the Great Sea, the Mediterranean. That's where the southern border ends.
Okay, so quite a journey for that southern line. What about the west?
The west is much simpler. According to the text, it's just the Great Sea itself, the Mediterranean coast. That whole side is the boundary.
Makes sense. Nice clear line there. Now, the north.
The north gets specific again. It says to draw a line from the Great Sea, the Med, over to Mount Hor, a particular mountain.
Now, Hor. Okay.
From Mount Hor, the line goes to Lebo-Hamath. And the text says the limit, the boundary point, is at Zedad.
Zedad.
And then from Zedad, it extends out to Ziphron, and the final northern point is given as Hazar-Enan.
So another set of named locations marking that northern edge. It's really quite deliberate.
Very deliberate. And then finally, the east.
Okay, how does that connect back?
It runs from that northern point, Hazar-Enan, down to Shephem. From Shephem, it goes down further to Riblah, and it notes this is on the east side of Anakoin, probably meaning a spring or a water source.
Makes sense to use water sources as markers.
Definitely. Then it continues down to what the text calls the shoulder of the Sea of Chinnereth.
Which is?
That's the Sea of Galilee, specifically the eastern side, the part in the Jordan Valley.
Oh, okay.
And then the border just follows the Jordan River itself, south, all the way down until it ends back at the Salt Sea, the Dead Sea.
Completing the loop. Wow. That is remarkably detailed.
It is. And the source material we're looking at points out something else right here in the text. The tribes of Reuben, Gad, and half of Manasseh.
Right. They settled earlier.
Exactly. They had already received their land east of the Jordan River. So this incredibly detailed description in Numbers 34, it's specifically for Canaan proper, west of the Jordan. Those other tribes were already outside these lines.
So the very act of defining this space also implicitly defines what's not part of this specific grant, even for other tribes of Israel.
Precisely. And that level of detail, that focus on a defined space, as the source notes call it, that's really where the interpretation starts to get interesting.
Because it wasn't an instruction to just expand indefinitely.
Right. The source emphasizes this wasn't a command to take over the whole world or grab as much as possible. It was specific, limited in a sense.
And that's where the reflection notes pick up, right? They ask, why this limited area defined so carefully?
Yeah, and the core message they draw out is, well, It's pretty countercultural, especially for us today.
Yes, yeah.
The interpretation suggests that, from this perspective, God's blessing isn't necessarily about giving people absolutely everything they might want or could possibly imagine grabbing.
Yeah.
Instead, the idea presented is that true blessing is receiving exactly what is needed and what is specifically meant for you, within boundaries.
That definitely pushes against the go big or go home kind of thinking we often absorb.
Totally. The source notes explicitly mention that. Compared to constantly striving for more, for boundless expansion, a defined area like Canaan might seem small, maybe even restrictive.
Like settling.
Perhaps. But the source argues these defined limits aren't God being stingy or holding back. They're seen as intentional, powerful in their own way.
How so powerful?
Because they define your place, your specific inheritance. It removes ambiguity. This is yours to steward.
So the land of Canaan, even with its very specific borders, wasn't framed as inadequate.
Not at all. The commentary we're drawing from emphasizes it was seen as enough, unequivocally theirs, and fundamentally good.
So the divine action here wasn't about limitless giving, but maybe deliberate, focused provision.
That's the perspective, yes.
Yeah.
Provision within limits.
Okay, so that's the ancient context and the interpretation from the source material. How does this connect to us, to someone listening today?
Well, the reflection notes argue this whole discussion actually has a lot of relevance. They prompt us to think about how these ideas, boundaries, enoughness, specific blessing, might play out in our own lives.
What are some of the key takeaways they suggest?
One is this idea that blessings, from this viewpoint, are specific, tailored, not just a generic wave of good luck, but maybe something intentional with a particular shape and scope in your life.
Interesting, like a specific job or relationship or even a challenge.
Could be, yeah. Another point the source makes is that boundaries aren't automatically negative. We tend to think of limits as bad, right? Things to overcome.
Sure. Push the boundaries, break the mold.
Right. But this perspective suggests boundaries can actually be protective. They can define your area of responsibility, give you focus, maybe even create a safe space, purpose even.
Protection and purpose instead of just limitation.
Exactly. And maybe the biggest one the reflection notes hit on is this. You don't need the whole world to live a full life. The idea that having enough, even if it's within clear limits, can actually be enough. Sufficient. Good.
That feels profoundly different from a lot of modern ambition.
It does. And the source material actually includes some direct questions for you, the listener, to mull over.
Oh, like what?
Well, first, it asks you to think metaphorically. What's your current land? Your job, your community, this particular season of your life. What are its current, maybe God-given boundaries?
Okay, identifying your current space.
Then it asks, where is your focus? Are you mainly looking beyond those borders, always chasing the next thing, the more?
Ooh.
Or are you investing your energy in stewarding what you have, cultivating the land you're actually in right now?
That's a challenging question.
It is. And the last one is maybe the toughest. It asks if you can trust, really trust, that what you have right now is enough for you from this perspective, even if it's not everything you dreamed of or planned for.
Wow. Can you accept the current boundaries as potentially sufficient, even good?
That's the heart of it. These questions, drawn from the source, offer a different lens for thinking about success, contentment, and maybe even navigating the pressures we all feel.
Seeing defined spaces not just as constraints, but maybe as intentional gifts.
Potentially, yes. That's the idea being presented.
So just to kind of wrap up this deep dive, we've looked closely at Numbers 34.
Right, those incredibly specific borders given for the land of Canaan, north, south, east, west, all laid out.
And we've explored this interpretation from our source material, the idea that these defined boundaries aren't about lack, but represent a specific, maybe even protective blessing. The blessing of enough.
Yeah, a concept that really challenges that relentless modern drive for more, more, more. It suggests there's value, purpose, maybe even freedom within limits.
It definitely contrasts with a lot of the messages out there.
For sure.
So here's a final thought, building on what we've discussed from the source. Consider this. What if real satisfaction, deep purpose, isn't found by constantly trying to expand your territory, break boundaries, get bigger?
What if, instead, it comes from really digging in, cultivating, and flourishing within the boundaries you have right now?
What kind of focus would that take? What kind of ambition, maybe a different kind of ambition, is needed for that compared to just chasing more?
Yeah. What does it really look like to build your life wholeheartedly within the land you've actually been given? Something to think about.